All right. Welcome to Founders Field Notes, the podcast where you can learn from founders how to be founders. I'm founder and CEO of Klugonics Group, Jason Klug, and serial entrepreneur. On this week's episode, we have Tyler Green, the co-founder of Cash, a outdoor products company that has a very unique and well-equipped tailgate system for trucks, where basically you can protect your tailgate from mountain bikes, but at the same time, flip down your tailgate and have a ready-to-use pair of seats and a cooler. It's a very unique system. They call it a modular tailgate system that's very versatile and can be used in many different ways. Tyler also works with his brother Dillon, and the two of them founded this company about 6 years ago, and we've been working together ever since, and they've grown quite a bit and have continuously perfected and made their product better and better as it's grown. And with this product being so special and unique, they've built some good relationships, which we can't talk about what they're coming out with next, but there will be a point, if you follow them, where you'll see an exciting announcement about a project they've been working on for the last year and a half. So Tyler's background, more being focused on the sales and retail side of consumer products, where he worked at a company, a small sunglass company called Oakley. You may have heard of them. He worked the retail sales side of things for many years and also has experience selling dental equipment. So with that, the ability to knock on doors and build relationships with buyers and dentists, he's developed great experience and able to sell his tailgate system to retailers, which is a new part of their business that they're growing on top of their e-commerce side of their business. And Dillon, his background is in website and marketing. So with the two of their skills combined, they're able to diversify and expand and sell in a variety of channels. So listen in and learn about Cash and the products they've built, but also how they have taken their love and excitement around the outdoors and the experiences they've had in them and built their Basecamp system, which now a big part of their day-by-day adventures, whether it's skiing, mountain biking, or whatever, revolves around this Basecamp system. So listen in and enjoy. How long have we known each other?
7 years.
Yeah, but I didn't meet you until you moved here. Or no, you came to visit. You were in Chicago.
I was living in Chicago, yeah. But you and Dillon, how did you meet Dillon?
Through Weld and Julian Carr.
That's right.
I was meeting with Julian about discrete stuff, and
yeah,
Dillon was there. Hi, I'm Dillon.
Yeah, that sounds like him.
And we're in the Weld office, and
And you were just by yourself. You were Klugonics, or were you consulting, or what were you doing? No, I
was Klugonics. Wait, I think I was like in the process of quitting my day job.
Okay,
maybe, but I met Dillon. It was probably a year before you guys really started.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because I had met Dillon a few times at the Weld office. And then I think Julian Carr sent me an email introducing Dillon to me because you guys wanted to make the truck pad.
Yeah.
And he was like, Dillon, wanted to meet you guys, or I wanted to introduce you to Dillon because he wants to make something. Yeah. And that was the Gator Guard.
The Gator Guard. That was the very first, the Gator Guard.
And I still have Dillon my phone under his name. It says Gator Guard.
Really?
So every time he calls me, I laugh at that.
That is funny.
Yeah. But no, that was back in 2016 or
2016.
Yeah, 2016 I think is when. So I would have been 2 years into this.
Wow. And you were just by yourself, or you had a couple other people? David?
No, not yet. Or he might have been just starting soon after, but I know I think even Ed started working for me then.
Was Aaron there?
Sam.
Okay, Sam. Sam
did those original sketches.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was trying to pull up dates, and so I just went back, and it was like in a completely different email. And the very first email that I have from you is for a bid, so we must have talked. Mm-hmm. And then I got a bid from you June 16th, 2016, which is really fast because we met and started, maybe I'm getting ahead here, but we started like conceptualizing the idea over Memorial Weekend of 2016. Mm-hmm. So at the end of May.
Yeah.
And I was still living in Chicago at the time.
Yeah.
Dillon was in Salt Lake.
Move quick. You know how we roll.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but let's go back to 2010 when you worked at Snowbird.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I got a whole. I got Cora since I've been
Nice.
gone. Since I've been gone from Maui, she's been
Nice.
stalking you.
That's awesome. Nice.
Yeah, so we go back to Snowbird sales associate. What does
Sales
Snowbird
associate.
sell? Ski tickets? You sell one-off ski tickets? Can I interest you in a ski day?
I worked at Snowbird at the main lodge there. When you walk in, there is Wings gift store on the right, and then on the left it's this always revolving retail store. And so I actually worked in then the Cool store, so like the apparel.
Yeah.
But they also sold
Sam now works for
goggles
Cool.
and so great company. And I've obviously known them forever. But God, that's funny.
I got the jacket.
I mean, by working, I was kind of in college, kind of in flight school, and working at the Cool House, I guess, as a sales associate. I'd love to know what I put down in that description.
That's all it says, a sales associate.
Yeah, no, that was
from his LinkedIn.
Good time.
And then Sunglass Hut.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes, Sunglass Hut. That was a good time.
Very short stints at these jobs that must not have been long term.
No, but they laid a pretty solid foundation. I'll say at Snowbird, I think I got a free pass. I think I read like 7 books in whatever time frame that was, because you'd get a rush in the morning and then no one would come into the store for like 6 hours. Mm-hmm. So I'd just sit there, and I'd like to think I was doing homework, but that doesn't sound like me. So
yeah, I didn't do homework either.
No. And then Sunglass Hut at the Gateway here in Utah.
Yeah. The one that's separate, like the one that's propped up on the...
Exactly.
Yeah. When the Gateway was popping.
The Gateway was popping.
Pre-City Creek.
Pre-City Creek. City Creek wasn't around, so I worked there for... Oh God, I don't know. Yeah, it couldn't have been very long, but I was working there because I had really gotten it, even I want to say 2009, I actually had an interview with Oakley to be on their field marketing team. And they must have not known that I was 19 years old because they couldn't have done that job unless you were 21 for minimum. And so I was like, all right, I need to get some retail experience while I'm, I guess, going to college. And so Snowbird is great. We've skied there forever. And then Sunglass Hut was like, all right, I'm going to learn about sunglasses and retail. And I crushed it. Like I did really well. Mm-hmm. And it you learn a lot in retail, very similar to like being a server. I don't know if I have that on my LinkedIn, but I was a server also at a country club.
I did that too. Yeah.
But yeah.
People skills.
Yeah. People skills. Sunglass Hut was great. And you meet all these different people, and you sell a lot of sunglasses. So I actually did really well there.
Yeah, but then you that's like a shoe in to Oakley when you get there. But we're not there yet.
No.
You had a job a year, it looks like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then you're a ramp agent.
By
U.S. Airways. I don't even know of that airline. What airline is that?
U.S. Airways actually bought out American Airlines while I was there. But U.S. Airways was like a large, primarily East Coast airline. But they were all over the world. And so I got a job there because I moved to North Carolina, and I was just kind of doing a mental reset, moved out there with my dad. And it was an awesome job because, whatever minimum wage was then, that was definitely like $7.50. And I would maybe work 10 to 15 hours a week, but I had free flight benefits domestically. And then I could go to Europe for I remember one time I went to Spain literally for 26 hours. And I think the ticket was $27 round trip. But I did
$27?
$27 because you only had to pay the taxes. And so I went over there. I don't think I slept maybe 30 minutes and just hung out, traveled, discotheques. But I would do that a lot. So the job was, you're the baggage handler, pushing back, airplanes. And I worked at Greensboro. And then I also moved over to Charlotte. And then I really only quit that because after they started looking into purchasing American Airlines, they wanted to unionize. And I remember thinking, I don't really want to work full time here. I'm just doing this for the flight benefits. But I loved that job. I really enjoyed the hands-on part of it. I mean, you're working out in the middle of the summer. It's like super hot in the winter. Like you're up in the little ice box thing,
Oh, that sounds awesome.
It was fantastic. Yeah. I mean, it was like one of those jobs, like you didn't realize how good it was until you left. Yeah. Obviously the flight benefits were great, but yeah, that was a good little, certainly not a career move, but it allowed me to fly all over the place. My then girlfriend, now wife, I actually couldn't even afford to drive to see her like 3 hours away, but I would get in an airplane and fly down there for free. And obviously you're on standby, but yeah, I did a lot of traveling doing that, and it was fantastic. Highly recommend that to anyone in college or who has a little bit of time. So yeah, that was great.
That or working at a golf course, I feel like too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, certainly.
Or a ski resort.
I mean, it's about the benefits, it's the same thing. Snowbird was a ski pass.
Yeah.
Sunglass Hut. I think I made okay money, but it was just like to get experience. But yeah, the airline was awesome. I mean, I was 21 years old then when I first got the job, and I could fly anywhere really that they had seats open. And I did. I went all over Europe and all over the United States. So it was a blast. I took one of our very first dates with Carolyn was actually because she was on a buddy pass. We went up to New York, had lunch, and then flew back.
That's crazy. That's a
cool.
great date.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
That's when I moved to Utah.
From Georgia?
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's 2011, 2012 season.
And then you started working
I worked at Canyons.
Really? So I forgot about that.
A lift op manager.
And you got a pass.
I would manage I was like, basically the dude that would snowboard around and give all the lifties pee breaks and lunch breaks.
That sounds like a great job.
So I got to do like 15 laps a day.
And this is when Canyons was still Canyons.
Yeah.
And you just give people pee breaks.
It was owned by Talisker then.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
No,
yeah.
I had the best runs of my life ever because there would be, like the days where it would dump and they call you in early and you'd get like, like the bomb squad would have to go up, right? Yeah. And we would have to go early to get up the lifts to let the ski patrollers up to bomb.
Nice.
And so we would have to be on the mountain at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And I remember taking powder laps in the dark with like a headlamp to get to the lifts.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
But, so at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, the sun's rising.
Yeah.
Still have an hour before opening. I would still get like 2-3 laps in.
And you're just ripping.
And I remember like the runs that were like, the black wide open runs that had no trees on it.
Yeah.
Just like 2 feet, snow, just like deep powder, wide open POW fields.
Yeah.
Where I would just like be alone, not a single human anywhere, and just have a perfect run. And I would get 2 or 3 of those before opening.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the jobs that you kind of look back and you almost don't realize how great they are at the time. Or maybe you did, but I had no idea.
No, it was, it was amazing. I think I went like 130 days that season.
Where were you living? In the valley?
Downtown.
Yeah. Oh, sick.
By like Liberty Park.
So cool.
Is that what it's called? Liberty Park? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I forgot that name.
That's awesome. Good for you. Yeah, those
days, you're right. Like you look back and you're like, okay, I enjoyed it because you get the social life.
Yeah, the social life, and also I was riding up. I've got a season pass to Snowbird, so I still go there a lot. And I was riding up with this guy who was a cat driver, and we're just like talking, and I wasn't talking about what I did, and he was just describing it, and I was like, man, that sounds like great because like when you're done with work, like you're done with work.
Yeah.
And obviously now, having a bit of a relative experience. Yeah, like there's nothing to take home. So when you're done, you're done.
Yeah, very stress-free. So I remember when people would complain, like other lifties and stuff, I'd be like, dude.
This is
Are you really complaining right now? He's like, I didn't get enough breaks today. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, it's...
How was it sitting in your warm little lift house and eating your peanut butter and jelly sandwich after you took a few laps? Was that difficult to get paid to do? What are you doing tomorrow? Oh, you're off? You're going to go skiing?
Yeah, I was going to say. And then you go skiing for free. Tough.
Yeah.
Tough.
You get your discount, your employee discount at the lunch shack and get your sandwich for 50% off or whatever. Come on.
Yeah. But at that time, I remember Snowbird had a similar thing. And whatever they were paying me, I remember thinking, all right, well, I really still can't afford anything here, but at least, I could maybe get a beer or something. But
yeah, I would splurge a little bit and get a sandwich once a week.
Yeah, once a week, maybe.
We do like 4 10-hour days.
Yeah.
There are big days, but
yeah.
I remember on the off days, and my buddy Colin, who moved out here before me, and then I followed him because he had a room for me to move into at the house that he was staying at. And I remember we would always like try to time our off days. Yeah. And you'd get passes to the other resorts, as well. Like they would do like buddy passes or whatever. Yeah. So you get like a free, I think I skied once at Deer Valley. That was the only time I've ever skied. And I taught myself to ski. Yeah. And we would time our days off and those days were so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Cause we knew the mountain so well. So we knew where all the good stuff was.
Well, and especially, I mean, I took it for granted growing up where we did in Sandy. And so like we would just kind of grow up always skiing, snowboard, always having passes. My mom worked there so that we could really get passes for a while. And, growing up here, like I was glad that I left, like living in North Carolina and Chicago and a couple other places. But, to like come back and realize like, oh my gosh, like this is unreal. So like to have you have the experience of not being from here, coming here, really being a ski bum, I'm like, that's awesome.
That was great.
That's awesome.
And I got that job with Scotty.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, our boy.
All right.
Scott Paul.
So, yeah, we'll get into him in a little bit. You're a podcast. You're a broadcast journalism intern. What the hell? Little detour.
Yeah.
So this is part tied to your schooling that you're doing?
So this is, so my reset of Utah, Sunglass Hut, snowbird. And then I moved to North Carolina to kind of do a reset, started going to school. There's a community college in Charlotte. And I remember I must have quit the airline at that point. Because
you had to because you had 3 jobs that year.
I did, yeah. But the great part about it, because it was like, I mean, everyone at this point was like in their junior year. And I remember thinking, it's hard not to compare yourself at 21. And I had a girlfriend, my now wife, that was like about to graduate like Sigma Cum Laude and like already had a job. And so I remember thinking, I need to like get it into gear here. So I went to this great community college in Charlotte, Central Piedmont Community College. I was paying my own way. And I remember walking out of the library and seeing this office that said like intern placement office. And I remember thinking, okay. And so I walked in there and they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I don't really know. I'm studying communications, whatever the hell that means. But I was kind of starting to float a little back into like acting and modeling. And that's a stupid thing. It's easy money. And there's a lot of work in Charlotte. But I was always kind of interested in doing like broadcasting or something in journalism. And so, so they got me a job at PBS Charlotte, and I actually worked under he was the general manager for PBS Charlotte. And I did a bunch of things. Like I went on to like video shoots. I used to like edit scripts. I mean, it was like and I did a couple other internships where they were completely useless. But this one actually, like they would put me in an office and they say, hey, like watch this video, write a script, and then get it back to us. And yeah, it was a great opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
And then you did that for what? A few months? And then
I think.
And then you're like, okay, let's go back to the intern office and get a job in the footwear industry.
So, so that one was funny because and it's funny, like look back, I had a lot of jobs, especially in Charlotte. That one was funny because I was actually working at Dick's Sporting Goods as well, part-time apparel associate. I'm sure that's on there.
That's on here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so
Dick's Sporting Goods
so Renaissance Footwear in just outside of Charlotte. I'm working at Dick's Sporting Goods. This guy comes over. I'm helping him. I remember pick out a North Face jacket. He starts talking to me about what I want to do. And he goes, well, I just invested in this footwear company. And if you're interested, like we need a social media person. And like we'll bring you on as an intern. And I must have just finished the PBS one, which was unpaid. And I vividly remember the guy goes, yeah, like we'll bring you on as an intern, work as many hours as you want a week. We'll just do like $15 an hour. And I remember like almost laughing out loud because I remember thinking like, that's like
good money then.
That's crazy money. Like, I think, I don't know. Again, going from airlines must have been $7, Sunglass Hut must have been for an internship to basically launch their social media platform. And Renaissance was a licensing company that did all of the footwear, this tiny little office that did all of the footwear for this little company called Walmart. Yeah. And so they did all the collegiate licensing footwear, like slippers and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they had an office in Charlotte, and I helped to launch their social media.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were paying me money.
So that's a good experience.
Yeah. I had a little office, and yeah, it was cool. A little cubicle.
And then you worked for a sports team?
Then the Charlotte Bobcats it
says the Charlotte Hornets.
So it was the Charlotte Bobcats, and then they changed their name to Charlotte Hornets eventually.
Was the Bobcats offensive?
I don't know. Perhaps. Maybe that's why. No, it was because they used to be the Hornets. They'd better, it's a better name for them. But that was, I remember I was watching a lot of Mad Men at the time. I don't know if you watched that at all.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the suits and everything. And so I go to interview for the Charlotte, then Bobcats, and like, it'll be a team with a group sales internship. And everyone's wearing like a suit and tie. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm, you know, feeling like Don Draper. That was a great experience to learn that suits don't really mean anything. And they're very uncomfortable. And I got to meet Michael Jordan a couple times. I went to a lot of basketball. Yeah. Met him like in the employee elevator, and not like, you know, it was more of like, thank you, Mr. Jordan, for the opportunity. But
one of those awkward elevator rides with him?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
but it was cool.
I'm Tyler.
It was kind of like, hi, thank you for the opportunity.
I know you don't need to introduce yourself.
It was like, Mr. Jordan, we're good. So,
I like your shoes.
Yes, I can't afford them, but yeah, they're cool. So that's about all that I did there. That was one of those internships where you're like, all right, like cool. I guess I learned a lot, but I also learned like, okay, I don't need to wear a suit to be successful. And that might sound small, but like at the time, I remember thinking like suit and tie. And
I made that decision in the third grade.
Yeah, personally. Well, good for you. Yeah, I was locked into to Mad Men a bit much, but good opportunity. Yeah, went to a bunch of basketball games, and that was cool.
That's sweet.
But that was a grind. That was like watching these guys make like 50 phone calls a day, and that was good opportunity.
This is interesting to go back through this with you.
It is.
Because I always
haven't
think
thought about this in a long time.
Well, it's good and the reason why I like to go through these too is thinking back to like what shapes the experience.
Right.
And from this, it's looking at it, it's like very broad bunch of experience. So it's like, if you're not actually doing all the little items it takes to build a business, you at least have to manage them and understand how they work and connect together. It helps you get the ability to lead it and manage it, which is you have to know what you're doing to actually direct it properly. So that's cool.
Absolutely.
Because then you go, and then you get more of the sales experience, which is what I've known you the most for. Dublin Dog Co., dealer services rep, so you're selling dog collars and stuff.
Amazing job.
Yeah.
Awesome job.
I remember you mentioning that. And then you got the gig at Oakley, which you told me was with your brother, Joe.
Yeah, he helped, and luckily the person
he was on the interview, right?
Yeah,
so just messing with you.
That was actually after. Long story short, after I got hired at Oakley, he pulled this prank on me that I'm sitting in HR at Oakley, had just gotten like my dream job that I've been like grinding for years. I'd just gotten married, so like I got the job, I got the wife, I got the whole thing. Got like good salary for like starting out. And then I'm like in HR training, and this person that I don't know comes and taps me on the shoulder. My brother played a prank on me that basically it made it sound like I was going to get fired and that they were letting me go. And he was the guy on the speakerphone who was supposed to be the general counsel, and they pulled this whole prank. And then at the end of it, he's like, "Yeah, Ty, we're just joking." And like I was like about to have a heart attack because I'm sitting there like at headquarters. I don't know anyone, and I'm like going through my brain thinking, my wife just quit her job because like I started this, and like she's taking, and I was just tripping out.
You just moved to Chicago for that, right?
They just moved us from Charlotte to Raleigh, which obviously is not very far, but like I started a whole life, like got this really nice town. It was so good on my older brother. That was pretty funny. So, but great. I mean, really, Dublin, I'm so glad that I got the opportunity that I did at Dublin Dog, because I just want to shout out the guy that ended up hiring me actually went in for a part-time interview for another company that was part of this portfolio as a part-time customer service rep called Mountain Khakis, based out of Charlotte. I'm sitting in the interview, and this is like, I just got my 2-year degree. I didn't really know what I was going to do. And halfway through the interview, the woman just goes, "I think you'd be better suited in like a sales role." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, yeah, that's what I want to do." And then this guy comes in, and his name's Jason, and he starts talking to me about how he just sold his company, Dublin Dog, to this parent company. And he goes, "So now we're really like, I have all this capital," and he's like a serial entrepreneur and has done and still doing a bunch of other things to this day. But for 4 months, I basically just called on pet stores and, small apparel companies or small apparel shops all over the world, just selling like a $35 dog collar. And it was so great to have that grind for 4 months and to also watch and work with a guy that had just sold his company, but was such an entrepreneurial mindset in the best sense of just grind. And he told me, he's like, "You're joining a company that I now have capital to do what I really want." And so, I mean, we were going all over the place traveling. Like we do these, you're seeing like the dock dog jumps, like where so we'd go to those,
sweet.
we'd sponsor them. It was cool. Yeah. And then I get the job at Oakley where like, it's not you still had to sell the brand, but like everyone knew what it was.
Yeah.
And so to have like grind, and then come in and you're like, pretty much like, hey, we're here, you have to respect us. And
it's more about what you're launching this year versus what,
hey, please buy us. Yeah. Like, they have, obviously it's a fantastic company and awesome product, but I was glad to have had that 4 months of like grind. No one knows who you are. Yeah. And we're really expensive. Please buy. But I did good at that. Yeah.
Those no's are valuable though.
Oh my gosh. It was the best. Yeah. Because had I started, I think, straight at Oakley, like I probably would have only ever known yes. Yeah. And massive budgets and all that stuff. So it was a great opportunity.
It skews perception to be an entrepreneur getting that many yeses.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Versus 99% no's.
99.9%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun. So did you go to Super Zoo and Global Pet Expo as well?
Yes. Yeah, we did those. Yeah, my very first
those are good shows.
Professional trade show was the one. What's the one in Orlando? That's
Global Pet Expo.
That's Global Pet Expo.
That's a good show.
That was a good one. That was down.
Hunter goes to that now. And
at the Orange County Convention Center. Yeah.
Yeah, then Super Zoo is a good one as well.
Yeah, that one's it's the one in Europe, right?
No, it's in Vegas.
That's the one in Vegas. That's right. Yeah.
Ooh, the Europe one. That sounds fun.
Yeah, that was. I was only there 4 months, but I was supposed to go to that. But great job. That was cool.
Okay, so that makes sense. You get all the no's at Dublin.
Yep.
Dog Co. Respectably, right?
Yeah, respectably.
And then you're at Oakley, and you're there for a while. That's right. When I met you, you were at Oakley.
Yep. Yeah. So when we met, I was on the field marketing team, and at that point, I was living in Chicago, and that was a great job. It was like a mix of like sports marketing, where you'd go to the major events, and then you would be selling stuff. Like, I don't know, like I went to so many different PGA, shows and, events, and a lot of fun, but, a lot of, definitely a grind in the sense of like at one point I was working throughout about 7 states in the Midwest, but at a company truck. We didn't have any kids at the time. We're just living in Chicago and
big city life.
Yeah, taking the purple line, and my wife was working at Northwestern at the time, and it was great. I had a ton of fun, but it was always like you were in charge of, the sell through, not the sell in.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of training, and again, just going and representing this, world renowned brand all over the place. And some pretty amazing experiences with that.
So you're working Oakley.
Yep.
Couple years.
Yeah, about almost 4, I think. Yeah.
Then quickly, you and Dillon come up with the lockable truck pad. While you were at Oakley.
While I'm at Oakley, me and my wife, we fly into LA and then we drive up to Bishop, which is on your way to Mammoth on the 395. And we went to go visit my dad and our stepmom, because he was living there. He was a pilot, but it had some time off or something. And then Dillon was living in Salt Lake, and then he flew to Oregon to interview with Yeti. And Dillon was working in bike shops. I think he was maybe even in college at the time.
I think he was at Weld.
Or at Weld, maybe interning or working there.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he went out to Yeti, and it was kind of like my job. And I'm sure he was like, oh, I want a, company car and whatever. So he went and did that. And then I remember he flew into Reno and then drive over to Bishop, this tiny little town. And really, when and I've told this story a number of times, obviously, but when I look back on it, Dillon and he came to me and he was like, I've been going through my head about ideas. And then he goes out to Yeti. He turns down the job, obviously, but he was like, I just heard about these 2 brothers that started this company. And obviously, multi-billion-dollar company, now publicly traded. But he just honestly, and I'll totally credit Dillon as my, him and I were less than 2 years apart and now been business partners for 6+ years. But, he was the one that really kind of was like, I have an idea. What do you think? And I don't remember ever being like, oh, I want to start a company. But I remember seeing Dillon's passion and thinking, well, that's cool. So then basically for 2 days we were talking about it and how do we do that? He brings up this guy that he had just met out in Salt Lake named Jason, who was a product development guy or something. I didn't know what you did. And basically, we actually do have the original notes, and the notes were not so much about the product, it was more trying to find a name. But Dillon had this idea for a tailgate pad because he'd been a bike mechanic working in bike shops about a tailgate pad that would lock to the truck. Because the issue was that people would buy, I don't know, we can throw out brands here, Dakine, Yakima, they were all just sitting on trucks and they all kind of look the same. But the issue is that you can just walk up to it, and still the same today with those guys, is that you can walk up to it and just take it off the back of the truck. And then I remember my dad and Dillon and I, very late, I'm sure plenty beers deep, just kind of having this concept of like, what else could you do? And that's where we started thinking, well, you would want chairs on the back of the tailgate, like when it folds down, and why not have a cooler? And that's really where that started. So that was Memorial Weekend 2016. And then, like I said, I looked back through the emails, and our very first meeting was June 16th, 2016. And that's when you and Dillon and I started coming up with this idea. And we had no idea about what it would cost. I mean, it wasn't like I was planning or saving for that. I had savings, but that's like where it initially started. Yeah. And then you sent us over the original rendering for what I guess we were calling the scab, and I don't even
Gator Guard.
The Gator Guard, and then I have it in there as the scab. So we must have been. What does
the scab stand for? Was it an acronym?
I think it was I think our idea was that it was like a scab that you peel off, and that it's protective. I don't know.
That's dirty.
It's very dirty. But I mean, that's all part of the brainstorm process. So I think I like Gator Guard better than scab. Certainly like the Basecamp pad, Basecamp system now. But yeah, that's where it started. So that's 2016.
But 2016, we just had a drawing.
We just had a drawing and an idea.
Yeah.
And I think to get to work with you, that I do know is that Dillon and I
thought Dillon sold his camper.
And then I just dumped everything that I had in savings. And we literally just said, all right, let's do this. And we did, I remember maybe getting a quote, and then, we just went for it.
Yeah.
So that was 2016 to get a tech pack started, I believe.
Yeah. But let's see. So we did the concept sketches, which had the flip up seats and everything. Obviously, you guys had a big life event.
Yeah.
You guys paused. When was that?
It was January 23rd, 2017. Our dad passed away suddenly, and he was a pilot, and he died in an airplane crash.
And I remember you guys paused for a bit.
I'm curious, actually, your take on that, because
I remember you guys paused, which obviously I remember, and I remember contacting you guys, and it was sad.
No, and I've told this story many times that I give you full credit to be the first, because no one knows what to say to you.
Yeah.
And no one, and rightfully so, I'm sorry. But that's from a personal standpoint. And then on a professional, I always give you full credit that you were the first person to ask us, are you ready to do this again?
Well, I saw it as something that, because your dad was always part of the conversations.
Right.
So I remember when, let's see, it would have been a few months. It was 4 or 5 months after. Yeah. I would say.
Yeah.
And I had a little patent event thing going on.
Yeah.
And I invited Dillon and you. Dillon showed up.
Yep, that's right.
And when we got there, gave him a hug.
Yeah, that's right. I
was happy to see him again.
Yeah.
And it was I remember just being well, let's keep get it going again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time is right.
Yeah. Well, and the timing was because at that point in 2017, in I want to say August, I'd always wanted to move back to Utah, but
that's right. The similar time frame.
That experience certainly, my two things on it is it was terrible. It's not part of the plan, but you certainly get a lot of perspective. And as I look back on it at 26 years old, then to have that, the perspective that I got was time is very important. And so my wife and I just started looking for jobs to move back to Utah. And so that's when I took a job to move back to Utah, left Oakley. And also kind of always part of it was if we're going to do this thing with cash, I need to be in Salt Lake. Yeah. We need to be closer to do
family.
This. Yeah. Close
and
to
your
family.
Mom was
close
still
to the
here at the time. Too,
our
right?
mom,
she was in Sandy.
No, she was in Sun Valley at that point.
Oh.
So my wife and I moved back, and then we bought our first house in Cottonwood Heights, and we were 5 minutes away from Dillon. So yeah. But it was certainly a big life change in the sense of everything within a year.
And then it was go time.
But to totally credit you, you were the first person to be "Are you guys ready to keep going?" And it was great. So
and then I had to build the tech pack and build a prototype and all that stuff, which took some time.
Yep.
But we were all gearing up for the Kickstarter.
Yes.
And I remember, well, here's the chain of events that I can't remember is, when did I introduce you to Scott? Was that after Kickstarter?
That was before.
It was before Kickstarter.
Because after you kind of came to us and you were like, are you ready to go again? And then the reality of next steps was, okay,
you needed some cash.
We needed some cash and we did not have any personally.
And I remember being like, okay, well, let me make an intro.
Yeah.
And you and I went to the Protein Foundry and I was like, Scott, just give these guys a chance. Let's just listen. You just made some money.
And the very first thing that Scott, and I loved his podcast and interview with you on here, and I love Scott Paul, and it's one of those people that I will never forget him.
He's everybody's favorite weirdo.
He's everyone's favorite weirdo, but Scott and Dillon and I very weirdly have this, I think, kind of connection because he had worked at Anasazi, which is a wilderness therapy program that Dillon and I had actually attended.
Yeah,
so I remember that being like
bad kids. We
were the bad kids, but it was an awesome experience. 6 weeks living in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's one of those places like, when you go there and then you meet other people, you're like, I know what you went through. But I do vividly remember Scott sitting down and be like, yeah, Anasazi, cool. And his very first thing, he goes, I'm not really going to like invest in this, but Jason wanted me to be here, so like let's look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And Dillon wasn't available. He must have been traveling, so it was just me, you, and Scott, and like an idea and a rendering.
You being all nervous and me being like,
super nervous.
I was like, it's just a chat with Scott. He's fine.
Well, yeah, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if this doesn't happen, what the hell are what are we going to do? And so Scott started it by saying, I'm probably not even going to invest, but I'm doing Jason a favor, essentially. And then by the end of it, I remember like watching him, and I do remember him saying, how much do you need? And we went over that. And I do remember him saying, would you take Bitcoin for this? This is 2017. And I was like, I don't even know what Bitcoin is. And
well, that's when it was peaking at the point.
It was peaking. And I remember him going, no, that's not a good idea. So let's look at a cash option.
Yeah.
But so that was Scott and his investment enabled
the timing was good because he had a bunch of funny money.
Exactly.
At that point. Because he bought in Bitcoin like under $2,000 at that point.
Yeah. Good for him.
And then it was up and he's like, oh yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's when he gave money to Discreet and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like me,
Well,
so he was starting to dabble in the angel investor thing. So the timing couldn't have been better because he doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, probably. Well, I wouldn't say smart, but I mean, what I'll say is that, God bless Scott Paul, because he certainly helped enable the next, series of events.
Yeah, getting the Kickstarter, getting the prototype dialed,
getting the patent work started,
getting the patent dialed, which is valuable.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, and you don't know, obviously, much like anything, but you don't know how valuable it's going to be until later. But but yeah, God bless Scott Paul and his investment.
Yeah, so you got that money that gave us the ability to finish the tech pack, but then also finish
the first couple rounds of prototypes. Yeah,
and prototypes that were actually, and obviously it's even evolved since then, which is normal.
Right.
You go through making prototype V1, which is enough for you to create video content to sell it.
Right.
So I remember we created that one hand sewn in Salt Lake.
That was great.
Which is actually turned out, it was pretty good. It was prototype,
pretty good. Yeah. But it was like something to be like, well, let's test this and let's see if it works. And Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah. She does a Choose Made.
Choose Made.
So
that's
she
right.
has her. She does purses and little bags and stuff. But she's messaged me since then and said how appreciative she was because she was just doing like hustle stuff as much as she could, like farmers markets and stuff. And I would bring her these projects where she would have to like apply her skills in different ways. Right. And now she has a day job where she does like a lot of what we've done.
Oh, cool.
So, and she messaged me and she's like, appreciative of the opportunity of her getting the ability to like learn how to make stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I always appreciated that message she sent me because I look back to that project and we did a few others with her, but that's like a challenging thing to figure out is go off of like a tech pack and create by hand a cut and sew soft good.
Yeah.
That's like that. That was like a big thing.
Yeah.
We had to route the wiring around it. I mean, there was like a lot going on with the cable and then also figuring out how to make it fit on the majority of trucks, which is always going to be a challenge.
Yeah, still to this day, right? Yeah.
Especially with as trucks have changed so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great experience. And then looking back to that Kickstarter you guys did, which is great. Because at that point, well, it took a while to develop, and then I had done my Kickstarter for Dry. And I remember I learned a lot.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I can't remember. Did I do mine before you guys?
You did it after.
Yeah.
You did yours after, but you had obviously had experience.
I'd done a lot of Kickstarters with clients.
That's right. Yeah. And so we went into it, and I mean, again, shout out to you. I mean, you've always been kind of a cornerstone of the company. But like you were always like, hey, here's an idea. Hey, here's an idea. And obviously we were doing the same. But yeah, the Kickstarter was when we realized, even after raising the money with Scott and then some family and friends. And I will say this, and shout out to my in-laws, Sandy and Mark Donner out in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. They were the very first people to ever contribute money. They sent us $1,000. And I remember the note was like, we don't want any equity. Here's your start. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that one day I'm able to write them a check for not only $1,000, but a little bit. I have given them 2 very cute grandchildren, but I did just want to shout out to Mark and Sandy Donner because
that's great. They
were the first people that they basically paid for the flight to come out and meet you the very first time when I was living in Chicago.
That's great.
So anyways.
Cool. Yeah. Yep. So when did that Kickstarter happen? That was it was in 2017, right?
It was in 2017.
So we moved pretty quickly.
Yes. Yeah. No, we moved very quick. And
so when we picked things back up.
And no, actually, it was 2018 when we did the Kickstarter. Okay. I remember filming it in July. Yeah. And our friend and guy that did all the videography, it was just hotter than hell. And I was inviting all my friends out to like stand in 110-degree heat. Yeah. But it turned out really well. Yeah, we did. The goal was 50,000 in 45 days, and we did over 53. But we only got to that point on like day 42. Wow. Is when we hit the goal.
Barely made it.
It was a stressful experience.
That's a good Kickstarter though.
Yeah, first one I thought that was pretty good. You know, and we started it with no digital ad campaigns. And it was like 5 days in, we're like, all right, we need to ramp it up. You ramp it up. So
and even that timing was good because Kickstarter these days are way harder.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
Yeah, it's just like you can't run a successful Kickstarter without really dumping money into ads.
Yeah, because I remember we spent $10,000 on ads, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh!" And now
5x return. That's pretty good.
That's pretty damn good. Yeah, like knowing what I know now, for a product that didn't exist and like a sample that was
pretty niche too for the platform.
Very niche. Very
so I look back at that thinking of how you've got to be a truck owner. Yeah, you got to be a mountain biker. Mm-hmm. Majority of the buyer would be a mountain biker.
Yeah,
I've actually pretty niche for the platform, which is really good. 50K is huge.
Yeah, 50K. But again, I vividly remember just watching, and anyone that's done a Kickstarter understands, you're just watching that number and you're thinking, and you have to be, this isn't going to happen and we're just going to lose it. Mm-hmm. So I can remember on like day 41, day 42, when it finally did happen, and I remember just bawling my eyes out, calling Dillon, we're crying, all this stuff. And so I've actually met people in person at events that were like, I was donor number, whatever on your Kickstarter. Yeah. And there's still, obviously, like you said, like the sample that we were even trying to sell evolved, it's rightfully so. Yeah. But it's amazing, to think about people that have, and I always try to get on there and, it's not like I really need anything on there, but as a way of, kind of paying it forward.
Yeah, I still back them.
Yeah, no,
I think I've backed like 130 Kickstarters.
You've done a lot. I've maybe done like 5 or 6, but
I'm like a super backer.
I have a badge. You're big time. Do you? Yeah, that makes sense. That's funny.
Super backer badge.
That's funny. Actually, I get notifications when you back because they must know that we're connected or something. I
haven't done it in a while. Well, you could follow me on the platform. Yeah. I'm sure you follow me.
Yeah. The last couple of them, half of them didn't ever get delivered, but
I got some. I got one in the back. This injection molding machine.
Really? That's cool.
That I backed like years ago. It was like $3,000.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, this is a big risk.
That's a big risk.
And I backed it.
Oh my God. Wow.
And the dude delivered.
Good for him.
He did, a small shop, handmade inject. And if I show you the thing, you would not think it's like a handmade machine. It's very good.
Yeah. Kickstarter.
So you get some of those that surprise you. And then still today, like I'll get a package in the mail. I'm like, what the hell is this? And you're like, and it's like, oh yeah, I backed that on Kickstarter 2 years ago.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Because we were, our delivery date, I think that we were 7 months behind from when we said that we were going to deliver. And then again, anyone that's ever done mass production or a Kickstarter knows that that's the reality.
When it always ends up being way more expensive.
Way more expensive.
$50K is still not enough to bring it to market at the end of the day.
No, and that's when we also realized, like, okay, that's going to get us X amount, for, I think our first MOQ was like 500 units. And we must have gotten close to that, but then we also went and like raised more money.
Yeah, you kind of.
But Kickstarter, as I look back, our strategy, if there was one,
it's a valuation stepping stone.
It was a validation that this is working, that people want it. And then we always knew, I guess we found out that we needed to raise more money, which it was the validation ticket. So we ended up utilizing that to up the value and actually raise more money after that.
It like gives you the ability to go to investor and be like, look, we have some sales.
Yeah,
versus
exactly.
Saying, we got an idea.
Sitting down at Protein Foundry and this guy Scott Paul he's there to, to humor you. But it was a very intense experience for sure.
And that's the thing, though, that a lot of entrepreneurs might not know or realize when they're raising money. At some point, they think, okay, I'm going to get one investor to give me 200 grand.
Right.
Never really the case. It's usually the family, friends, and you piece it together and, you'll get 10K in and then 20K from this person and then a 50K check will come.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And you stack them up and then eventually you get your full amount.
Yeah.
Which is more valuable because then you get more advocates to lean on.
You do.
Versus just getting one investor, which might not add value other than money.
Well, yeah. And I remember someone vividly, obviously there were a lot of people that said no, but I can remember some really good advice in terms of raising money is that a lot of people have money. There's good money and there's bad money. And what they mean by that is that the good money is the people that will be your advocate, your partner. Hopefully they've had those experiences so that you can actually be, go to them. And whether it's you or Scott Paul or someone, because I remember Scott Paul, I remember calling him and being so stressed about Kickstarter being late. And I can remember Scott saying, don't I'd never done a ton of products like you're doing. And he goes, but just don't freak out. Like the time that you think is so, and I was like, oh, that's great. And then on the opposite side of it, you have the bad money, which is the same amount of money on the check, but those are the people that are grinding on you and just, wanting to take control. And that's not to say that you don't bring in people that are on your board to help, but those are the people that are going to be like dogging you every second of the day, which it doesn't mean that you don't need to have somebody, holding you accountable, but, especially in those infant stages, like you want that good money investor that's like help building you up, adding value outside of just the financial part, because anyone that has raised money or has started a company knows that that's the other big part of it. Like this person, Dillon and I together, and shout out to you and anyone that's like started a company by themselves. Like there's so much to do that you don't realize is going to happen. And then you get into the situation and it's just like, so it's nice to have people that have done it, that are successful and that can give you like very sound wisdom of, like, hey, like I went through it, here's what you should do. Yeah. And then there's other people that, like I'd call and I'm like, you've done this, and and some of them were helpful and some of them weren't. But that was a really important lesson that I think about often. Yeah, everybody gets their different ways. Yeah. Yeah. This story for Cash was more similar to like Derive for me, but obviously like Klugonics was like straight up, I had to get a deal to pay the bills. Yeah. I couldn't raise money. There's nothing to raise money for. Yeah. Except for Scott gave me 20K, but that's also because he underpaid me at his job, that the company that he sold. And, I just basically convinced him that he owed me one. Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, that's hilarious. That's funny. Yeah. That's funny. But you've certainly come a long way from the early days of our meeting. So congratulations. Oh, yeah, we can... Those basement meetings. Those were fun. Those were fun times. They're still fun now, but there was something about it. Yeah. Yeah. So then we go, Kickstarter launches successful. Mm-hmm. You got 50K from that, which all in ends up probably being like 40K. If that. Yeah. Because all or paying off the ad credit cards, it's like you walk away with like 35K. Yep. You still have a minimum order quantity of a pretty high price item. Yeah. So it's still like a lot of units that you're, and then you can't just buy the bare minimum to fulfill your Kickstarter. You need excess inventory so you can continue to grow after. Exactly. So you're then on like, there's this weird feeling after Kickstarter. It's like, awesome, we did it. And then you're like,
but it's now we're committed.
Oh shit, now it's on. Yeah, like now it's like
people gave me money.
Yeah.
I got to give them a product, and I need to find another 80 grand or whatever it might be, right?
Oh, and I've never actually quoted the container price correctly, and
so that you always get surprises, and especially when it's your first product. I mean, I even did it with Dry, even after it was like making tons of other products. It was still like, oh wow, that's more expensive than I thought. Oh, shipping to the customer is way more expensive.
Yeah.
It's like it all adds up.
I have a quote that I remember we estimated shipping. We didn't know what we were doing, but we estimated shipping for a full Basecamp system to be $35.
Well, did you go to like a UPS store?
We must have done that. Like, that sounds good. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, exactly. And I remember, so that was a learning experience, but yeah. So, but much like anything, you don't know, and you're just excited. But there is certainly that feeling after you hit it of like, oh, like we really have to do this. Mm-hmm. Like it's for real.
Yeah. But you found the money, you found another investor.
Yep.
At this point, you had validation, you had found a supplier, and we already started working through the evolvement of it to make it more, that's when we got into the thermal forming and adding the bumpers and making it just a better product.
Yep. And we're also going through patents at this time as well.
Yeah, finalizing.
Which happened very quickly.
Going to non-provisional and all that stuff.
Yep.
What did you get, like $150K or something like that?
$150K, yep.
So you got plenty of cash to get the first version to market.
Yep.
We get production done.
Yep.
And you fulfilled before the following bike season, didn't you?
Yeah, we fulfilled. Of course, it was late, so we fulfilled in September.
Oh, so it was towards the end of the bike season. So it was like towards
the end of the bike season, but, we were thinking always about like, well, this will be like outside of just biking. This will be like for après. And again, at that point, we were just like thankful to have hit a Kickstarter, but then the reality of like, well, now we need to really start selling. And so really we were at the end of bike season, but then leading into holiday season, which helped a lot for sales to kind of get us off the ground. But again, it was like, we didn't know about fulfillment. Like I remember we moved 3PLs 2 or 3 times because we didn't realize the cost that was associated with it. Yeah. It was like all these things that like we had to put the product somewhere. We couldn't put it in our garage.
Big, and
then we go to one place, it's too expensive. I think we even got kicked out of one because they're like, yeah, this is too big for us.
They shut down or whatever.
They shut down something. We moved to this other one that I won't name names. That didn't really work out. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up getting our own. I remember we moved product like into my garage for a bit before we actually got our own warehouse space, which we still have today, which has been awesome. But it's just all these things.
Cram it in there.
Just cram it in there, which is, I mean, we literally got an electrician to raise the lights and it's a great office, but it's much like anything. Like you don't know what you're going to run into and you can estimate it. And obviously, hindsight or whatever, but I'm like, there were just so many additional costs, and then you fast forward into 2020, like no one told us what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. So it was we were in a really good space. But you're still juggling personal life. Mm-hmm. You're still juggling, at that point I just had my first kid and, obviously a bunch of other stuff still going on, but yeah, we figured it out. We got product and we were selling. We got a website and we're moving stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think about as a case study, just cash in general with the sheer volume and like size of the product.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking through with you guys the number of units per pallet in a warehouse. So it's like 36 units or 32 units per pallet.
Yeah.
And you think you're paying in a 3PL, you're paying a, $10 a month fee per pallet.
Yeah.
But having only 36 units per pallet,
it adds up.
That adds up
significantly.
And obviously you got your shipping fee there, and then you got your pick and pull fee, and then all that stuff. And it's just not something that you think about until the numbers are actually laid out on the table. Because in fulfillment centers and stuff like that, they'll have a hard time giving you an initial quote because they don't even think about it. They're just looking for customers, especially like a new one like they were at the time, right?
Right.
But, or at least that one example.
Yeah.
So that's always something difficult. So when people come to me with a product that's big, I always think back to that. And I'm like, well, let's think about this.
Yeah.
Does it need to be
that big.
Like, can we flat pack it? Is there a way to make it some assembly required?
Right.
You know, let's just think about the volume of this thing and how that's going to palletize and what that'll look like in a palletized format.
There was no cell on our original Excel document on total cost of goods sold about palletizing. I mean, we thought we knew. Yeah. But we didn't, you didn't know. And now we know, and we've learned from it and made adjustments around just shipping in and of itself.
Yeah. Now you pack your containers to the brim with no pallets, all that stuff.
No pallets.
You basically unload the container right into your warehouse and stack it to the ceiling.
And
it's probably not OSHA compliant, but no one needs to know about that.
No, OSHA, Schmosha. Yeah.
Well, it's still small enough too, where it's like, a container load of chairs and coolers and a container load of pads is normally what you do, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
Technically two containers. And we actually, our last containers that we shipped and arrived was at the very, very, very peak of the last, the whole container. $32,000 or
about
something.
$36,000 after it was all said and done.
Yeah.
And, and obviously another variable that no one could play was the import and everything. And again, you just work around it and you figure it out.
It just changes. But the thing that I always say is when you're building and preparing your unit economics around the chaos of inflated importing prices,
right?
And then when things came down, if you prepared and sustained throughout that side of things, a huge health boost that companies got when things went back to normal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, now it's like, not being like, oh, we can get through anything, but much like anything difficult in life, you look at it and you're like, well, we did that. And now we have a better experience and better knowledge and move forward and work around it. And, our newest version of the pad, obviously you're very close in alignment of developing that. Like a big part of it will be how we pack it. And that'll save us significant amount of money and also be a better experience for the customer as well. But all things you don't know what you don't know, but now we do and make it work.
Yeah. So now it's got, the thermoform padding that acts as a nice bumper to protect the tailgate.
Yep.
So that we've increased like some of the tech of it.
Yeah, big time.
The lock system throughout the development, the first prototype, I remember we had a cable that surrounded the whole truck bed and we thought that was necessary.
Yep. Nope.
Later we learned that it wasn't.
Yep.
So now we have a riveted base to it that the lock is mounted to, and then we have a cable that just comes from the other side.
Yep.
So it's still cable locked. Like it's still hard to get off because you're either breaking through stainless steel rivets, cutting the whole pad, making it not worth it to sell.
Yeah.
Or breaking the lock, which is pretty bulletproof.
Well, yeah, the lock in, like the carabiner, you'd have to really do something. But in terms of, we actually had a real life customer down in San Diego. He sent us pictures. His car got broken into, and he sent us pictures of how they were trying to get the pad off. And it was like what we thought was always going to happen. You can get it off if you really want to go after it. The whole point was that
big cutter, though.
Yeah, a big cutter. But you could tell this person that was probably on some sort of drugs or whatever. They tried to cut through it. They couldn't get through the cable, and they took the other, siding clips off, but like they couldn't actually get through it. And he sent us a picture and was like, haha, it worked. And we're like, great. And then we ended up just sending him a free pad because he also had like a $60,000 truck that got busted into.
That's good marketing.
Yeah. But it was,
worked.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like our patents are around, the lock itself and then the MOLLE webbing on the inside for the detachable accessories. But the lock in and of itself is its whole own project. Dillon went over to our original factories because I was actually having my kid, so I didn't want to, stress out on that. But, kudos to Dillon for developing relationships while he was there. And I hope that one day we can be back there in person, but just seeing it in person, something that I've never done, but kudos to Dillon for developing relationships because we've ended up increasing, overall factory, upgrades with how it's done and the people that we're working with. But it's a lot that goes into, a little tailgate pad. And anyone that's made a product knows that. But it's been, and we're not just making a tailgate pad. We then have a detachable chair and then a detachable cooler as well. And certainly we've made upgrades, from the original to the Basecamp 2.0 and then moving on to the Basecamp XL, which, hopefully working with your team's fun.
For those big boy trucks.
For the bigger trucks, yep. So right now our pad's going to fit about 98% of every truck out there. It's going to be ideal for the mid-size ones, but the XL will be, for the larger full-size trucks. Mm-hmm. So full coverage on the back and a couple other additional upgrades. So
yeah, because the difference of those tailgates is astonishing.
Yeah, and it always changes, and
it's impossible to hit the whole market.
No, it's impossible.
So I think starting with like the medium small size was smart because you hit the majority, and even the big trucks can use those.
Yeah, they can.
They just can't fit as many bikes as they could if they had it fully covered.
Exactly. But Basecamp XL coming summer 23.
That's soon.
I knew that you were going to say that. We'll call it late summer, early fall 2023.
Yeah. And then the chairs are unique because it's like a stadium chair.
Yep.
But I remember when we were developing it, the stadium chairs that were all out there were very like thin and would cut into you a little bit.
Yep.
And we decided that making it just thick and padded and comfortable was more valuable because it was more about comfort sitting back there than it is,
like you're not rolling it up and then taking it backpacking.
Yeah, this is something you can take it off and use it,
right?
And you would bring it into a stadium and be way more comfortable than the skinny, thin ones that are for packability and stuff. So that was also a big value. And then you've learned over time that the chair by itself is its own product on Amazon.
Like we were not expecting it to ever take off, and that's the lounger chair. And so when we started selling on Amazon, which was just kind of like, hey, let's try this out. And the chair started selling like crazy. And I remember like we were never planning that, never thinking about, we're just going to sell chairs. But that's been a crazy success on Amazon. And now it's a whole product, just call it customer segment for us that we actually recently just brought on another team member to really just handle e-com for Amazon. And that's primarily around probably 85% of our sales on Amazon are the chair. Mm-hmm. And so
this is the full system.
Yeah, compared to the full system. So so that just took off, and it was one of those things where we had no idea, and it's thankful for it. But
an accessory because it gets its own life.
Exactly. Yeah, which is very cool. So it's been a fun experience.
Yeah, that's been great.
Yeah.
Now you guys are like in sustain mode, right? Where you've the product's gotten to market. This is back in 2018. 2019, you're focused on selling what you had left over from the Kickstarter. And then the pandemic hit and supply chain started getting crazy and stuff like that. So it would be great to go through like the learning lessons that you've gone through during that time. Because obviously that was hard for many businesses. Yeah. And even harder for a business that has can fit very few items in a container. Yeah. And then two, very seasonal product, Yeah. So let's talk about that because there was a lot of challenges that you guys went through there. And at the same time, I remember when we were golfing, we were playing Glendale and we were talking about it and I was like, guys, I don't think you realize how hard it is right now. And they're like, well, we need to get this, we need to do another run and we want to update it. And I was like, then we should start now.
Yeah, of course.
And then, at the time you guys are like, we'll figure it out. We'll get it here by next summer. And I'm like, okay, then we need to start now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think we started a few months later, but that was a tough time for a lot of people.
So at the end of 2019, I remember that we did actually get another shipment of product. So we were like pretty fully loaded and it was just to get product there. And then fast forward to March 2020, pandemic starts. And the biggest benefit was that we still had a lot of product left over. And then fast forward into April, all of a sudden we started running a couple of ads. Like we'd never really done that before. And all of a sudden sales just took off. And it was amazing. I mean, at that time we were also really focused on, our retail space. We had a number of really great sales reps. We still do, but, we're much more e-commerce focused now. But like sales just took off. And part of it was everyone's outside. Everyone's got stimulus checks. Yeah. And the other companies were out of inventory. So because like when we had ordered, like we were overloaded on inventory in our eyes. And then all of a sudden it just like exploded. And like we were fulfilling orders. I mean, I remember just like, laughing, thinking, wow, this is just going to go. And at the same time, we were kind of like being like, well, we want to make some upgrades to it. And that must have been that conversation where you were probably thinking, I'm sure you do it with a lot of your clients, like this needs to go now. You don't realize how long it's going to take. And then fast forward into 2021, I remember January, February, things were still going really, really well, but it started to become apparent that like we were going to run out of inventory. And because of the investments that we'd made in other areas and, margins starting to shrink a bit and then prices starting to increase for shipping, we ran out of inventory. So that was towards the end of 2021, we literally had no pads left. We only had chairs. And so then beginning 2022, I remember we fulfilled our very last Amazon order just for chairs. And I remember sitting in our warehouse thinking, oh my God, like it really is empty. And like I never thought I'd see it empty because we were always, and to this day, just like stacked to the brim. And then we ran out of all inventory January, February.
And you're doing other creative ways of selling your accessories too.
Yes.
You were doing branded chairs. You were doing coolers.
Yeah, a ton of custom. Sales. Yeah, I mean, like these opportunities that were coming up were, I guess to get back to your question, things that we learned from it in general. Any
entrepreneur will take any opportunity.
Take anything you can. Yeah, we had like, we started doing like corporate gifts. Like, we had a really large real estate company here that was like, oh, we need like, it was like a $30,000 order with like custom coolers. We're like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And you're just chasing after it. And then you don't realize, okay, well, now we just lost like, 250 systems. Well, I guess we'll just sell the chairs and the pad. And so inventory management was non-existent at that time. And at the same time, we were also developing the Basecamp 2.0. And so that we really launched the pre-sale for that in February 2022. But we didn't have inventory and selling for quite some time. And so it was no inventory, which means no income. Expenses are still there. And we finally got new product in May 2022, and that was a Basecamp 2.0. But that was also delayed shipments, $36,000 a piece for a container, which is huge. And we had to order 2 of them. And so that was a very stressful time in terms of having to go out and raise additional money, getting unsecured loans, doing some things that I know that we had to do it, but I was never planning on doing it. But you had to do it to cover the, to cover the cost. So, and also at the same time, our minimum order quantity went from 500 to 2,000. So it's just everything that quote unquote could stack up against us did. It was like inflation. But at the same time, we're coming off this crazy like year and a half of sales that were just like, we couldn't stop selling them. So yeah, that was, 2022 has been probably the greatest learning example of just like slowing down and evaluating not just what do we need right now, but like what are we going to need in a year and a half. And I've probably said it too many times on here, but like also credit to you to step in as a friend and also, part of the company, to be like, hey, like, let me help out. And I think that that's something, if I could look back and talk about what I would do sooner, is that I always felt like I was probably a little bit of ego in there, but also a sense of like, I don't want to bother these people. Like they've already especially our investors, like giving us money. Like they don't want to, they would assume that I know what I'm doing.
It's never the case.
No, it's never the case. And so I'm very thankful that also, especially this year, it's only been, a little over a month, but I'd say like in the last like 4 or 5 months, we've really started to strategize a lot more. And it's not like we were just, flying off the rails, but we started thinking 2-3 years from now. And that helps a lot when it comes to, unit economics. There's still going to be things that we don't know that are going to happen, but now we can plan around that. And so, in terms of kind of like what I learned through this whole process was just slow down as much as you can, because you have to be fast. You can't just dilly-dally. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that, are maybe engineer-minded, and it's like, it's not that they're sales and engineer, but like what I can do very well from the sales standpoint is like, okay, what do we need to do? Okay, go do that. And as a CEO, I have a lot of fun because like I get to dabble in every little thing, but I've also learned that like I can't try to control what's going on in marketing, and so I trust that my brother, who's the CMO, handles all of that, this new person that we brought on. But but still I'm very good at like exhorting people, and so I just find that that's what I'm good at. But I'm also realizing that people want to help, and if they don't want to help, they'll tell you. But people, especially investors that have sold off multiple companies, like they want to be there for you, and that's something that I wish I would have done a lot sooner.
Well, they want to return.
They want a return. Yeah. Outside of like, because the same thing with the Kickstarter, or even when you're starting the company, it's like, oh, two brother company. And, we have a perfect story. I mean, two brothers, it's not like we're utilizing it, but like dad passes away, part of the company, we named a product after him. But then you realize not that people don't care anymore, but even as a customer, like after the Kickstarter, they're like, yeah, like when am I going to get the product? And with investors at first, especially when you don't have anything, they want to be there for you and they're investing in really two brothers with this idea. But now the reality is like, no, like I want to help you because, we all want our return.
They have an interest in.
Yeah, which is great. And it's not, this like, it's not like money hungry, crazy thing. It's just like you find out that business people like want to grow businesses. And I've just met so many people that whether they're multi-billion-dollar companies I've had opportunities to talk with or starting out or 100 million, it's like every business person like is kind of wired the same. They might talk differently, but everyone really just like wants to navigate it. And you find out that it is a financial return, but people also just enjoy business like in general, which I really do too. So yeah.
So now the next, it's funny because as I keep doing these episodes, I look up at the wall where the people have signed their books, and a lot of the, so you see Parkett, Stephen Wilcox there. It says,
I remember Stephen
made that intro.
We never met when we were both working at Oakley. I made that intro. Nikki Barber, I didn't make the intro, but there must have been because we're family friends. It was Danny, who's our patent attorney.
Oh yeah, to connect with this guy.
And that's what it was.
Tyler and them.
Yeah.
Because I got an email intro from Danny, and I didn't know who Danny was.
That's what it was. But because he was helping us with our patents,
yeah.
So
and then we found out soon after starting golf together that it was Nikki's brother.
Yeah.
Funny.
Which she did an awesome. I just watched hers the other day. She did a great job on here too. But Stevens was bet on yourself, which is what you're doing by taking those loans out. Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of good things there that popped up. And you've Scott's DeFi Jedi. What value does that add, Scott?
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, sick. That's great, Scott. Awesome, dude. Sick.
Yeah. But so the big focus now, you're in this transitional period where, the similar experiences that like Nikki's experience that I experienced with Durai is like inventory issues are always a challenge as a new business.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like cash flowing it and figuring out debt resources to flow it.
Right.
Which is like hard to do when you can't have a good sales history because you stock out for a while. And it makes it hard to have those conversations with those debt resources that look at like trailing 12 months sales and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's other things you could do, like what you had to do. You take out, whether it's a loan on your house or you reach out to the previous investors and ask them for more because you know that if you have the inventory, it'll sell. Yeah. So you're betting on yourself and betting on the product that you believe in. But then a lot of the conversations that are currently having is making things more sophisticated. Yeah. So it's more of a ready, aim, fire type mentality versus the,
get inventory
when you're
and sell.
Going, you're shooting from the hips where you just got to figure out how to get that product in your warehouse and then just start hustling it, which is good. And that's what sets a company up for more consistent growth. Yeah. Because it sucks when you gain momentum and then you lose it.
And then you lose it,
and you do it again and then you lose it. And that hurts more than, you know.
Well, and it takes away, it's when you're sitting in a warehouse that doesn't have any product and you're like, well, we still need to like pay rent. We still need to like pay all these other things. And that was a scary time because the opposite of that was that we had like 8 months of like, we could just throw it in the street and someone would buy it, because no one else had inventory for the longest time. Yeah. But that definitely, and I'm glad it happened, obviously, because it forced us to slow down and then also get time to be like, all right, well, let's make the upgrades that we want on the product and let's like try to, because Dillon and I run the company together and thankfully we've always had like an intern or two to help with fulfillment. We've had sales reps, but now, we just brought on another additional team member, gave out equity. And that was another thing that I learned was we should have had that conversation a lot sooner because Dillon and I think just burnt each other out. And it really is difficult when you're doing that. You're dealing with family, you're dealing with a friend. Getting help, earlier than waiting until your warehouse is empty and you're like, shit, now what? Yeah. And I guess that's life in general, but
building a business with a brother can be tough. I mean, I did it with my wife.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I think about you guys often, and obviously, you guys have grown that business, and it's very exciting to see that growth. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it challenges relationships.
It does.
You figure out more about each other's flaws than you do skills.
Yeah.
The skills come up front.
Yeah.
But then the flaws come in after.
Well,
right?
yeah. And especially when it's going great. And then, but on the hard days, especially when neither one of you, and again, kudos to you for like starting and running a business by yourself for so long. But, it's like, even when there's two people, you're still like dividing up tasks. And when it's, with your wife, which my wife, Carolyn, has done a lot for cash that she will never really get recognition for, in the sense of going down to the warehouse. Mm-hmm. I mean, probably giving me tissues when I'm bawling my eyes out, or something. But yeah, Dillon and I have also learned a lot from our relationship as business partners and brothers. I think about how to like divide that up, and like, because it's hard not to always see each other and just jump into like, well, let's talk about business. But it's like, you got to shut that off.
Yeah.
Like, you got to turn that off at some point.
Yeah. You got to get back to the roots of, you know.
Like, why did we even start this? I mean, obviously being a brother, but anyone that also has like a friend, I mean, it's like, and I mean, you and I have another company together that I'm part of. And, I think that's, you just learn how to manage that, much like you do anything. But, there's still life going on.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard.
Kelsey and I definitely had the issues of where there were times where we were, married. Obviously, we had it was almost like when I would come home, because she worked from home and I worked from the building. Yeah. It'd be like I come home and it's like catch up about work, and it's like, well, where's time for like us being husband and wife? Yeah. So that was something we worked through. I mean, now we barely talk about Durai because we have Alicia running it, and
sure,
we will have conversations every so often, but they're very brief and strategic, chats about specific items versus like we need to sit down and hammer this out. Yeah, so that's definitely been that's hard to do.
It's very hard. Yeah. And I think I've learned about myself a lot is that, and this is just different personalities between my brother and I, but, I always have the mindset of like, if you just work, like it'll happen. And it's not to say that Dillon doesn't work, but like I've had to check myself to where I'm like, any 9-to-5 job, someone called me at 9:30 and was like, just like going right into like, hey, like, you got a minute? It's like, no, I really don't. Like, you could have scheduled this ahead of time. And so I think just differentiating that, like, okay, we have a business relationship and then we have a personal relationship. Like, and there are times that, we really need to be personal. And then there's also times where you're like, hey, we need to get on WeChat because the factory is talking to us and it's, 10:30 a.m. or 10:30 p.m. Mm-hmm. I remember one call at one point, and so thankful to have a partner, but like I remember I fell asleep on the call, and like Dillon's like nudging me, because it's like 1 a.m. our time, it's morning over there, but it's like there are those times, but that's not very often. The rest of it, just to protect your relationship, like keep it a little more business focused.
Well, at the time you had kids and your new baby probably at the time.
And a brand new baby, and and now I got 2 kids, and it's funny to like look back and
now Dillon has a kid, and
now Dillon has a kid.
I finally get it now.
Yeah, now
that
he's like
was harder than I thought.
Yes, it is. Yes. Shout out to anyone with, much like owning a business, once you do that or once you have kids, it's like a secret fraternity where you're like, oh yeah, like, you've done it, much like you. So, yeah.
Kelsey makes it much easier for me than I give her credit, though.
Oh man, I couldn't imagine doing it by yourself. Unreal.
Well, then let's summarize some of the field notes, the takeaways.
Okay.
You brought up a few good ones. What would be the main ones that you'd want to leave behind for another entrepreneur?
Anyone starting out, a couple things that, and I kind of mentioned from a fundraising standpoint, I would try to solidify as much information as you can beforehand. And then I would probably raise an additional 20% because you're going to need it. Mm-hmm. I think that when you are raising money, I've had a lot of people that have come to me that are like, hey, I've got an idea. And I'm like, if it's a product, I kick them over to Jason. And they always ask me, what are your thoughts? I'm like, raise a little bit more than what you think that you're going to need, because you will need it eventually, whether it's social media or anything. I would remain optimistic as well. I think that there's a sense of, pessimism that, people that are like, I'm just a realist. I'm like, no, you're just kind of being negative. Because, there are doors that open for cash that I had no idea were even available. So with that, know that you're going to go into a lot of meetings and events and things that will turn out to be completely, a waste of time, but you have to do them. Mm-hmm. Don't try to calculate it so much that you think that you know every answer, and because you're going to miss out on so many opportunities if you just, remain a bit vulnerable. And, it doesn't mean like, a guy says, hey, come into this alley, let's, check this out. And, he hits you on the head. I'm not saying that, but, you're going to go into a lot of meetings that, you just take and you can begin to sniff them out, down the road. You're like, oh, this guy's, just trying to scam me, or, this PR guy is asking $15,000 and it's not going to do anything. So remain optimistic, know that you're going to learn a lot along the way, develop some habits that you allow yourself to turn off as well, because it's super easy just to stay on your phone all day and to not experience anything that's happening around you. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
It's very difficult to do because it's so easy to be on all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's going to certainly take away from, even if you're single, but certainly, if you're in a marriage, I mean, don't forget to put your phone down and open your eyes sometimes. So.
Yeah, Kelsey gets pissed at me for that.
Yeah. No,
I'm just like, well, I'm mid-conversation, but I just need to shut this off.
Yeah, shut it off. Yeah, no, my 4-year-old told me the other day, he said, you didn't hear me because you were on your phone. And I was like,
oh, jeez.
Bro, but I was like, you're totally right. Let me put this away right now. So,
working on it.
Yeah, but that's tough to do. But, try to remain present, raise a little bit more capital than you think that you're going to need, and go to people that have done it sooner than later, and really be genuine about, don't try to find what, advice you want to hear, but like take it and be genuine. Read books about people that have done it. Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the guy that started Nike. Mm-hmm. I listen or read that at least once a year, because it's like a guy that grew a company, a products company. And, it's like, it'd be a hell of a coincidence if these people with successful companies were just super lucky. It's like, no, they did things that, that were smart and that you can also emulate. So yeah, learn from others.
Great.
Yeah.
Great finishing note.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And there we have it. Tyler Green, Cash. Thanks for listening in. It was a great episode to talk about and learn his experience and how they applied that to build Cash and the product that you see today on their website. He had some great takeaway field notes. Like, for example, it's better to ask people for help earlier than later. It's something that I always tell entrepreneurs and lure out of them, where there's no such thing as a entrepreneur that really knows what the hell they're doing. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. And if they're afraid to ask for help, it's always better to ask them if they need help, if you're in the position to give them help. Or if you are an entrepreneur and you're starting your new business, don't be afraid to ask people that have already gone through it for help. And if they say no, then, whatever, ask someone else. It's so much better to learn over a conversation with another entrepreneur that's been through it, or in the process of going through it, to where you can share the struggles and learn from each other. I don't think anything beats that. I think that's the most valuable way to learn. That's especially how I learned personally. And it's better to do it sooner than later. And at the end of the day, too, I feel like no matter how big your business is, if you're also not asking for help and having conversations even later, you're not growing. And there's always going to be new challenges and stuff to deal with as you grow your business. So it's worth getting the habit of doing it very early. Also, good point. It's like, just got to stay nimble. You just don't know what's going to come up, especially with the last couple of years, or I guess 3 years now, with this whole COVID thing that happened and what that did to supply chain, especially for companies like ours and Cash, and that dealt with the supply chain changes with the increased importing costs and freight costs and all that stuff. A point he said that works in some cases, but also not, is raise more money than expected, especially if you have an investor that you're working with and they're willing to give up more. That does make sense. If you're going to deal with one person, one investor, one check. Why not ask for more that'll give you just more longevity about what you do with it? It could, come and help you when you least expect it, when you have that little bit of extra cash to get through something. But also it prevents you from having to go back more consistently for more money, which can definitely be valuable. But I say if you're doing that, I would say plan for the lower amount and still execute like you raised the lower amount, keep that extra cash for rainy days, because rainy days happen no matter what, versus, raising more money and spending more money. And then all that cash could be depleted pretty quickly. So definitely plan lean. And then when you do raise the money, I think utilizing it as an intelligent way is definitely the way to go. No matter how much you raise. And then remain optimistic. Obviously, it's just like hard being an entrepreneur. So staying positive can help bring those vibes up and keep things going in a positive way, because it's super hard to be an entrepreneur, whether it's internal conflicts, external conflicts, having bad months or bad weeks or bad days. It's always a challenge, but definitely staying optimistic and looking down the road can help lift you up and get you through those challenges, because they're going to happen. It's like inevitable. So staying positive, not only while the challenges are happening, but I also feel like it's important to stay positive around those conflicts to get through them and look at the positive sides of them, and it'll help get through them, and it'll probably help you make better decisions just because of your mindset. Great points from Tyler. I wish we could have had Dillon in here too. I just didn't have the setup for it, but I appreciated the time. It's always fun to catch up with him. We've done it plenty of times on the golf course, and this is a great conversation. So check them out on all their social platforms and their website, trustcash.com. And also, thanks for listening and watching, and follow us on all of our social media platforms as well. See you next week.